Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So this week I want to talk to everyone about the knee movement in the backswing and in the downswing. I've been getting a lot of questions about this specifically, so I just want to go over some common misconceptions about what may influence the movement of your knees and just go over some common mistakes and how to fix them. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you are visiting my channel for the first time, please subscribe to see more golf-related content. All right, so I think knee movement in general throughout the golf swing is a really important indicator, especially about where your weight is moving throughout the swing. And when it comes to knee movement, a lot of people have questions about two parts of the swing, two moments in the swing. The first is when a player makes their backswing, their lead knee kind of would collapse and kind of move further behind the golf ball. So a lot of people ask me how they can, keep the lead knee in front of the golf ball, because you see a lot of the better players with their knee mostly kind of either on top of the golf ball or staying mostly in front of it. A lot of people are unsure on how they do that. So the second moment in the swing that a lot of people have questions about is in the downswing. So most people, what I see is when they come down, their lead knee kind of straightens out, and they've got their lead knee actually leaning backwards, okay, instead of it leaning or staying on top of each other, just so that you can get your weight more on your lead side. Okay, I can see a lot of this happening, and I see a lot of the knees kind of getting really, really close in together like this. Okay, whereas the better players, you can see they have just a bit more extension in the knees, right, as opposed to a lot of twisting and bending, kind of like this. So I just want to go over these two movements in this video, maybe educate you guys on what may influence this movement and maybe causing this movement to happen, and then show you some ways that you can fix it. So starting with the knee movement in the backswing, right, when the lead knee kind of starts to collapse and move a bit more behind the golf ball as you take the club back. Now, when I point this out to a player, the first reaction is, oh, I've got to just keep my lead knee in front. So they focus mainly on just their lead knee alone, and they physically try to, push their knee out as they take the club back. So I'm here to tell you that that is the incorrect way to manipulate the knee movement. Now, it's important for everyone to understand that the movement of the knees will be the most influenced by the movement of the pelvis. For example, if I were to move my pelvis or hip more to the lead side, I will not be able to do that unless my knees follow my hip. Right? You can kind of see that as I move my hip to the left. And reversely, right, if I move my pelvis to the right or more behind the golf ball, right, my knees will have to follow in order for me to do that. So if you are someone that kind of gets their trail knee kind of to collapse and move more behind the golf ball, it means that to some degree you have some lateral movement of your pelvis kind of away from the target. So, for example, if I went like this, get my knees to collapse in, right, you can see that the right side of my hip is moving ever so slightly to the right. Even if I just focus on my knee alone, there has to be some amount of lateral movement of your hip away from the target as you take the club back higher and higher. The more you can move your pelvis towards the target, or laterally more towards the target as you take the club back, your lead knee will stay more in front of the golf ball without you having to physically, move your or push out your lead knee. As you keep your head more behind the golf ball, you want to practice making sure that your hip or pressure stays more on the lead side. Okay, so you can see I'm not physically trying to move my knee out. I'm just focusing on keeping my pressure just a little bit more so on the lead side, and I'm getting my hip to move a little bit more into the target. So I'm focusing on basically my left butt cheek moving slightly towards the target as I turn. Okay, and you can see my knee appears pretty stable without me having to do this, right? Physically push my knee out, right? So if you can do that, then again, it's good evidence that your weight is pretty centered, and which will help you with your low point control. So if you think you are a player that gets the lead knee to kind of collapse behind the golf ball, then what I do for a lot of people at the beginning just to build some awareness of the movement, is they can use a wall. I don't have a wall. I'm just using this vertical stick, but you can just place your lead foot against the wall, and when you do your setup position, if you were to just do your normal backswing and have your lead knee collapse, you may notice some increase in space between the left side of your leg and the wall or stick. Okay, so you might kind of do something like this. You can see a wider gap form here. So what you want to do is you want to ensure that your hip or pelvis moves closer into the wall or more into the wall as you take the club back, and like this, as opposed to it being like this. Okay, and while doing this, you want to keep your head kind of staying relatively in the same spot, right? So I don't want to see any of this, okay? Upper body and lower body into the wall. You just want to focus on just getting your lower body only, or your hip, a little bit into the wall. Now, you don't have to physically put your hip totally against the wall as you take it back, but you just want to build that awareness of seeing your hip move more towards the target, kind of like this, instead of this. Okay, so I mean, if you are on the grass range and you do have a stick like that, you can just plug it into the ground, make sure it's kind of in line with your hip, and you can actually even go hit balls this way. Maybe if you record yourself from the front, right, you can kind of hit a shot and see whether or not your hip actually moves or stays in place, or actually moves away. Okay, so if you are doing it correctly, it should look something like this. All right, so moving on to the movement of the knees in the downswing. So I was mentioning before that most players that come in or have questions about the knee movement are in a position where their lead knee straightens out very, very early in the downswing, to where their lead leg kind of leans backwards, and their trail knee kind of comes in or collapses very close to the lead knee. So they'll be in a position that looks something kind of like this, right? And it looks very, very awkward, and it's kind of doesn't feel like you can generate much speed or have very good contact most of the time. Now, I mentioned just on the movement of the knees in the backswing how the pelvis is a big influence on the movement of the knees, and it's the exact same thing kind of on the downswing as well. So now the players who demonstrate this pattern, right, their hips are actually not really moving enough laterally towards the target from the top of the swing. You'll also notice that players who are here have a lot of rotation. Okay, now rotation is good, and it's very, very important. You definitely want to rotate your hip. Okay, but the golf swing is made up of more movements than just rotation, right? So we need lateral movements, okay, and we need tilts and we need extensions, right? So it's a correct blend of all these kind of movements, or these basic movements that will make up the golf swing. Okay, so if you are a player kind of in this position, you are someone that has to add or build in more lateral movement in the hip and also more extension. Okay, so the extension is kind of more getting your hips to kind of bend backwards, okay? And the lateral movement is just getting your pelvis to move more towards the target. So you got to build in both of those movements to get yourself out of this kind of position. So if you feel like you are a player that struggles with knee movement in the downswing, then again, you can use a wall or some sort of straight object that comes off away from the ground. So you can put your lead foot against the wall or that object, and you just put your arms across your shoulders. Now you can connect this drill that I'm about to show you with the first drill that I mentioned earlier, right? You can get your hips moving more into the wall. Now for the downswing specifically, what you want to do from this position is you want to push your hip or your belt more into the wall, and you want to make sure that your chest or your upper body is further away from the wall. Okay, so you don't want to see this. You don't want to create more space between your hip and the wall when you come down. Otherwise, you'll kind of demonstrate this movement. But instead, right, just eliminate the space between your lead leg or hip and the wall or object. Push your hip into the wall, and keep your head behind. So you'll find that you'll feel like your hip is always in front of your shoulders, and that's really, really important, right? If you're in this position, then most likely your upper body is going to be in front of your hip. Again, that's a really, really bad position to be in. Um, so again, you can combine it with the first one, hip more into the wall in the backswing, just to make sure that you don't get the lead knee collapsing behind the golf ball in the backswing, right? And then you can push your hip or pelvis more into the wall and make sure the chest is more away from the wall.